The clock is ticking toward an eventual drawdown of NATO and ISAF forces in Afghanistan. To talk more about the NATO mission there as well as elsewhere, we're now joined by NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen from Brussels in Belgium. Sir, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Sir, in October, you visited Afghanistan. You went to Kabul, Mazar-e-Sharif, as well as Herat. You spoke with President Karzai, our forces, and perhaps most importantly, the Afghan people. What did you see and hear from each of those sources that gives you the confidence that progress has indeed been made, and as we move forward to a transition, that the Afghan people themselves will be able to provide security there?
I feel confident that the Afghans will be able to take full responsibility by the end of 2014 based on my conversations with politicians and also commanders of the Afghan security forces. There is a strong political determination to take over full responsibility. And the military commanders are determined to continue the build-up of the capacity of the Afghan security forces. Some months ago, I visited Afghanistan and saw Afghan special operation forces in action. I was very impressed by what I saw. So based on all this, I'm confident that they will be able to take full responsibility by the end of 2014, and this impression was confirmed by the ISAF commanders I met from several of our commands in Afghanistan.
Now, sir, as we've also, during the past months, perhaps even this past year, transitioned into not necessarily providing the security and doing the patrols ourselves, but training the Afghans how to do that. You speak of the Afghan Special Forces. Are we also starting to see the Afghans training future Afghans to take that role?
Yes, indeed. And that's one of the encouraging improvements we have seen. Right now, around 90% of all training activities are conducted by the Afghan security forces themselves. And furthermore, we have seen the Afghan security forces take the lead in around 80% of all our security operations. And these developments are testament to the increasing capability of the Afghan security forces.
Last week there was an announcement that France recently pulled about 400 of their troops from Kapisa province. With 80% of the country being Afghan-led security, does that really complicate things, or are we still on track to make sure we're meeting timetables?
We are on track, and we stick to the timetable. It's important to stress that from now until the end of 2014, you will occasionally see announcements that nations draw down their troop presence or redeploy. That's not a rush for the exit. It's actually part of the plan. As the Afghans take more responsibility and we hand over that responsibility to them, our troops can take a step backwards and move into a more supportive role. So all that is actually a part of our plan. And all 50 nations within the ISAF coalition have committed themselves to stay until the end of 2014. And that's very encouraging.
Sir, let's move on to the, could you explain a little bit about the NATO response force? In a world where operational landscapes can change in a moment's notice, could you kind of explain to our audience why the NRF is so important and how those are enacted and what situations they respond to, or what situations can they handle?
I would expect the NATO response force to get an even more important role in the future. The NATO response force serves two purposes. Firstly, it aims at being able to be deployed rapidly if needed. But secondly, the NATO response force also serves as a framework for NATO training and exercises where NATO troops and partner troops, by the way, learn how to work together, how to operate together. As we draw down our operations in Afghanistan and elsewhere, it becomes even more important that we maintain our ability to work together, and I see the NATO response force as the framework for that. Furthermore, the United States has decided to rotate a brigade unit to Europe to participate in NATO response force activities. And that would be an excellent opportunity for American servicemen and women to work together with partners and allies in Europe so that we maintain that ability to operate and work together.
I know we certainly look forward to that continued training into the future, sir, and as well as with many other partner nations. One of those in particular, NATO member Turkey, recently requested the deployment of Patriot missiles as a purely defensive measure, considering the turmoil that's going on their border with Syria and the devolving situation there. Last week you said that NATO will discuss Turkey's request without delay. Where are we on that request?
Right now, we are in the process of making the decision. We received the official request from Turkey last week. This week, a military expert team is visiting Turkey to look closer into possible sites for the deployment of these Patriot missiles. In parallel, the allies that consider to deploy the Patriot missiles are in the process of parliamentary procedures, and then the NATO Council can take its decision, and I would expect that decision to be taken in days, definitely not weeks.
And finally, Mr. Secretary General, as we approach the holidays, is there anything you'd like to say to the many troops from so many nations out there who are serving away from their families as we approach the holiday season?
As we approach the end of the year, I know that everyone would like to be at home with their families and their loved ones. Your service and your dedication to duty doesn't always make that possible, but I want you to know that you and your families will always be in our thoughts. And to you and your families, I want to say a sincere thank you, and I would like to send my very best wishes for this holiday season and the new year.
NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen, again, sir, we appreciate you taking time to speak with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.